Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to another brand new episode number 2 of About Skateboarding. Now, if you're new here, my name is Sean. I do daily, or for the most part, daily episodes of a podcast and YouTube channel here for just, again, the overall world's universe of skateboarding and what it means to me and the psychology behind it, the mentality, and just everything in between. And just beyond all that stuff too, if you enjoyed this video, then definitely give it a thumbs up and subscribe for many more to come. And if you want to hear the audio, I will mention this too, there is also the audio version as a podcast format is also available in full over at the Apple Podcast, and I'll put all the links below in the description, as well as over on Spotify to listen to as well. Now, to get into things really quickly, and to kind of dive into the episode for this one, is that I wanted to talk about one of the more important, biggest frustrations, but also the biggest, almost like euphoria part of skateboarding, which is what I call, or what I'm referring to in this video at least, would be called kind of the relentless madness mentality behind skateboarding. And to me, what that means is it is the process of basically trying a trick or learning a trick or relearning a trick or whatever over and over and over and over and over again until you stick it, land it, whatever you want to call it. It's just that whole mentality, that whole relentless mental anguish process of getting it down, learning it, again, relearning it after an injury, even in some cases. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of focus on in this episode, because no matter where you are in skateboarding, whether it's your first day and it's your first skateboard, or you're learning, learning for the first time, or you've been doing it for, like me, over 30 years, and you're still trying to relearn the basics sometimes of what the skateboarding whole thing is too. It kind of all really applies to everything the same way, and it can be the most basic trick in the world of just how to even push, goofy-footed, how to push yourself switch for the first time, learning how to ride a skateboard switch, to the most like craziness, whatever, of learning like maybe a new thing over on like a vert ramp or whatever, or street skiing, doesn't matter. Just all of it kind of operates, to me, in many skateboards overall in the same aspect of everything. And to me, when I was thinking about this as a subject to kind of talk about and discuss on this channel and this whole podcast, I kind of was all diving back into when I was a kid again, because that's when I had the most time, I should say the most time in my life to, pursue new skateboarding tricks and really test myself and my physical ability. Not that I'm old now or anything like that, but it's a lot more challenging in your 30s. I feel like, at least from my own personal physical standpoint, to try and push to learn new things, just because of how I can get hurt a lot easier than I could when I was a kid or a teenager or a young adult. So kind of all that fun stuff. So, and it kind of brought me back to, again, some very early memories of mine of when I was trying to learn the first few tricks that really kind of became what I would call my staple tricks, which is like the ones that you learn to do enough confidently that you remember how they're never easy. Nothing is ever easy in skateboarding, I'll put it that way for a preface, but like I'll say just that you get them down so well that they are kind of your go-to tricks for like warming up. Whenever you go to, like, whether it's a new place or a new street area, wherever if you're downtown or whatever it might be, or you're traveling somewhere and you bring your skateboard with you, or just learning in a new environment, a new skate park, all those areas, and it's an infinite list really, but where you go to those areas and you're just trying to try out and get comfortable with the area that you're in, just to kind of get used to it, and you go to these tricks as a go-to thing to really just kind of get into your mode of being comfort, and maybe getting a sweat going to get used to it and adjust to it overall. And again, it made me think of all the first tricks that I ever learned, and I kind of went over them in my first video that I posted a little bit earlier today as well already. But like, just the first few ones that were, and I don't want to say easy, because again, nothing is ever easy in skateboarding ever. Like, you're always gonna fall. It's just the way it is. But the first few ones for me were just the ollie, and a heel flip and a kick flip, and I'll kind of go into more deepness and kind of a little bit of vulnerability on why they were hard for me. And I would love to know, before I even get into this, what your first tricks were as a skateboarder, and what the hardest ones that you've ever had to deal with or pursue or or retry over and over again, even maybe like years later, or whatever it might be. It depends on how long you've been doing it, of course. But let me know all that in the comments. I'd love to know, everyone that's watching this, like your perspectives on those kind of tricks, no matter what they are. I don't really care what they are. I just want to know, the challenges you guys have all gone through for skateboarding as well. So again, for me, it was the ollie because, again, back when I was first starting to skateboard, which was when I was about 4 to 5 years old, and again, the board that I had when I was that age was not, obviously not a pro board or anything near like that. And this was like in the it was like early 90s, 1991, 1992, when I was about that age. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was a skateboard that my mom or my parents bought from, like, I think a Target or Walmart, some generic, like, whatever, not even a skate shop at all. And I think it was made of plastic, and it was just a generic board that was really, like, it was still okay. It wasn't plastic. It was wood, actually. I remember it was a wood skateboard, but it was not like anywhere near the quality of what a professional board would later become. I'd get later, like, years down the road, so to speak. It was a lot heavier, and the trucks were not as good. Again, just overall quality was not near a professional, skateboard that you could buy in a skate shop. And the first thing I remember about that mentality part of it, which is, what I'm trying to kind of go through and discuss for this episode, is how, for the ollie at least, I remember, like, because the only thing I had for, and I don't want to say inspiration, but the first thing I really had for any kind of, like, lessons, if you want to call it that, wasn't even like skateboarding videos or any magazines, because none of that, I mean, those existed back then, but it was much more like I saw things on, like, TV and things like that, and that was kind of how I learned it, or I had to kind of, like, put it together in a very weird way that I didn't, like, see it in action, so to speak. Because my first introduction to skateboarding was just to get around town, and I didn't want to ride a bike, and that's why I got a skateboard. I wasn't, like, really, like, inspired yet at that age by, professional skateboarders, because it wasn't there yet. Like, there was no X Games or SLS Street League, nothing like that was happening yet. So skateboarding was not popular like that on TV yet. It was in the kind of the weird kind of phase where it was like, it was still popular, but it wasn't like everywhere on TV like it is now, or on a video game or anything like that. So I remember I knew about the trick of an ollie, and I knew it was to essentially jump up with your board to get air. And I only wanted to try because I've always been a very timid skateboarder and a timid person, so I would, like, approach every new trick, if you want to put it that way, with, I was very afraid to fall and get hurt, even though that's just skateboarding in general. You're gonna fall, you're gonna hopefully not get too hurt, but just you're gonna fall. That's just how it goes for learning new tricks. So I was always a very, very timid skater, and I remember that it took my brain many, many years, even past the age of, like, 4 or 5 years old, and past my first skateboard, even to, like, knowledge-wise, to really train my brain with how to do multiple, like, different things with my feet, my legs, because at that point in time I had no knowledge of how to do that, and I didn't have anyone, like, that was a better skater than me near me at all. Like, I didn't discover skate parks until a couple years later that there even was those around, and I saw, I did see some skateboarding magazines, but I didn't know that there was a such thing as a skateboarding video, like, with video parts of professional skaters or AMs in them, none of that stuff. So, like, I remember seeing magazines of people, like, in midair with whatever trick they were doing, and I didn't know how they got to that point. It was, like, that basic, and that, like, I was that novice and that amateur about it. But I remember, like, reading how to do it overall, like, just through other means and things like that. And I remember for the ollie, it was always a really confusing thing of how to, because I'm a goofy-footed skater, so, like, I remember it was just a weird thing how to, like, have my left leg on the tail, and then snap it and slide your foot, and then also jump. And to me, it just took so much effort to figure out how to do that, and then how to keep the board. It was a very sloppy ollie too. It was a weird, like, a sloppy ollie, because I didn't know how to keep the board with my back foot too. And nowadays I see all these, like, really young skaters where they, like, can snap and ollie like almost as tall as their height is, it seems like. And it's just crazy to me. And I remember just, like, trying it in the grass first, and then I got it down on the grass, and then I did a stationary on cement on my driveway, and I kind of got that better, but I was still falling over just because it was always a little bit weird and tweaked and awkward and that kind of thing. And I did fall a few times, obviously, but it was just, I remember the mental anguish that I went through as a young kid, that sports didn't really, because I didn't play any sports or anything like that. And so it was just always a mental anguish kind of thing, where I remember just being very not frustrated necessarily, but just very much like, why is this so hard to do? Like, is this even worth doing? Is this worth pursuing? If I'm just gonna fall and get hurt most of the time, or just hurt and get scrapes and that kind of thing. And once I got the ollie down, I will say that really is like, the ollie really is as a trick, a gateway trick to everything else, because literally everything, for the most part, everything in skateboarding, for the most part, again, starts with an ollie as far as like a starting point, because everything for the most part starts with the snap, the pop of it, and that kind of thing. And I didn't know that at the time, but I feel like once you kind of like learn a few tricks, like again, like 3 or 4, just like land tricks like that, and you get them down pretty good, that I don't want to see you build confidence, even though you do a little bit, but it's more of like, I feel like you kind of like once you know that that's like the basis for everything, once you can get a good ollie learned, that unlocks the ability or the confidence to go and try and do an ollie on other things. And that's kind of what I started to do when I was a little bit older too, as far as like going to like a skate park and going off of like just even things like a curb, just to get that like a little bit of air of like a foot in the air, whatever it might be. But that was one trick that I can remember, the ollie being a very, very hard test, because it was very exhausting emotionally and mentally to try and, again, get my feet to learn how to do different things all at the same time, all in a whirlwind. And it was just a frustration, because I would always, it wasn't like I fell and hurt myself over and over again, but it was just a very just frustration process for that part. And the next one for that kind of trick was for the heel flip, because I kind of ran into the same problem with the heel flip, where it was more like, I remember at that point being more confident in my ollie, but it was still a learning process. I was still not confident with my ollie, for not just for how high it could be, but for the consistency of my ollie. And so I remember like that the heel flip, because I saw it in a magazine again, that the heel flip was like, for me, being goofy, that you kick out with your front foot. And the hardest thing for me about the heel flip was really pretty much how it was always different, where I remember that when I first was learning it, that I always tried to put my foot in the same position, like my front foot in the same position to where to kick it out. But again, back to an ollie, like it was never super consistent with where I put my foot, or even the amount of pressure and kick that I put in my heel was never the same amount, even though I tried as hard as I could every day that I was learning it, to really get that pressure to be the same place. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to learn how they did in the magazines, which was how to catch with my back foot, catch the grip tape, and then be able to put my front foot back down on the board and then put it all down. And one thing I've never ever as a skateboarder ever been great at or got confident at was ever catching a board in midair and then landing on it. I just never was like that. I would always, if it was a flip trick, I would always do the flip trick, and then the board would kind of like not land by itself, but it would land, and I'd kind of fall on it. And that always kind of drove me crazy, because if I did tricks like flip tricks on any kind of transition or ramp or whatever it might be, or just whatever, or at any kind of speed, that it made me, again, very, very nervous and very timid to try and always stick it and just have the confidence to put my feet down and roll away with it. Because nowadays I feel like, or not even nowadays, but just in general, like from skateboarding, when skateboarding went into, video parts, and you would see all these like professional skateboarders that they would seemingly, in the video parts at least, have this insane amount of like what I called like a magnet foot, where it was like whatever flip trick that they did, that the board just came back up to them and their feet, and they just dropped down and just rode away like nothing. And I know it wasn't like that in reality. There was many attempts to do most of those tricks for them, or kind of like that kind of feeling, but it was just such a mental frustration for me to see those video parts. And again, and I will say this much: don't ever compare yourself as a skater to anyone else, because we're all at different places in skateboarding. We all are good or better at different things for how we handle the whole aspect of skateboarding, for tricks especially. So I just want to preface everything that I go through here, that don't ever compare yourself to another person, because again, we're all different people, and it's not worth that kind of frustration, because that's a whole different kind of frustration of that essence. So I would say it is very healthy to give healthy credit to other skaters when you appreciate them and respect them. That's one thing, but don't ever compare yourself and put yourself down mentally or emotionally because you can't do whatever it is as clean as someone else can, because there's always going to be that skater that's younger than you are, and it can catch it, like I'm talking about now, catch a board in the air, half your age and whatever it might be, it's just the way it is. So with all that being said, again, so the heel flip was my other trick when I was starting out, at least. That like was just always a pressure point, because again, I just could never, I felt like I could never get my front foot in the right spot to get a consistent flip. And I'd run into the issue a lot where I would kick the board almost as hard as I could, and it would end up in like a weird kind of like, I don't know what the name for it is, like a weird kind of like shove it flip kind of thing like that. Like, is that a varial? Like I think it's called a varial flip, where it's just a varial 180 and a flip. I think is what it's called now, or what it's been called for a while. I forget the name of it, but that happened a lot on accident, and I wouldn't be prepared for it a lot. And so I'd kind of try and land it, and it'd be weird, and I'd fall, or I'd land primo on the side of the skateboard, and then kind of like force it down and fall on that way. And I was always again scared of falling and getting really, really hurt, so I didn't do it super intensely. And it just took me a long time to gain my confidence in that area for skateboarding, of just the basic stuff. And that's another area that I always had, not trouble, but it was a lot longer of a process to learn and become confident with my heel flips because of all those areas. And it was even harder when I learned how to do it, or was trying to learn how to do it when I was riding, because I feel like at the time as a kid that since I couldn't do it confidently when I was stationary as a heel flip, that it would be even worse when I was skating something. And I never really honestly learned how to do it very well, even over transitions or like off a curb. Like I did do it. I did learn it, but it was like I was always scared of, like, because what happened to me the most, at least from my perspective, was that I always would do the flip and then I would land on it. Like I said before, I wouldn't catch it, but I'd land on it, and then I would, if it was off a curb a lot, I would like land on the board and then slide out, because for whatever reason I couldn't get my balance to be bam bam like that. I'd never had that kind of power, or I didn't do it consistently enough to get that kind of just, that confidence to do it. So that's why I give major respect to a lot of street skaters now when they can seemingly like throw down a heel flip over off a huge ledge, or throw down like a 360, like a tray flip, like nothing. And I'm just like, dude, like confidence, it's insane. And then the other flip trick of a basic one, if you want to call it that I never really fully got. I mean, I can still do them on occasion, but they're still hard, is a kickflip. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's because for me, when I was learning kickflips, I started to try kickflips like probably a month after I got a little bit of confidence with riding, like with a riding heel flip. And it kind of goes back to even my days of learning how to ollie before that, because I mentally could not for the life of me figure out how to flip the other direction. Like it just didn't make sense to me mentally at the time, where I was like, okay, how do I flip from to the right instead of the left? And I couldn't like get the mentality of, because I was used to my heel kicking so much, I guess is the best way to put it. So I couldn't really get the hang of, for a while, having the idea of using my right foot to flick the corner edge of the board and have it be a very quick, concise flip. And then, but what was weird about that one is that the kick flip for me was, once I got the flip down, which took a while again, but once I got it down, the catching it on my back foot was actually weirdly easier than heel flip. And I've never really understood why that was with how I learned it. But for whatever reason, when the flip worked off my right foot for a kick flip, that the catching it on my heel was, I don't want to say more natural, but it was more manageable. And I don't know what the difference is. Like I've never learned like from the life of me again what the difference has been between those two flip tricks from how they catch on the back, because I think it's just because like with a kick flip, at least for me, that your back foot is stopping the flip from going more and more from flipping again and again and again. Whereas on a heel flip, I just feel like it's different. And again, I'm not a professional skateboarder, obviously, for all those things. So like and all that. So I feel like it was just one of those things where I was like, I've always been curious how, like there's a YouTube, I'll put this, there's a YouTube series, like a video series out there with the last one I saw had like Jack Black like driving through LA, I think it was. It's just called Do a Kickflip, where like they yell out the window of the car. I think Tony Hawk's done one too, but where they yell at the car like they yell, just do a kickflip, and they give a free skateboard deck out if you do it like on the spot and land it. So whenever I watch those videos, I get so jealous of all these kids, which again, don't compare yourself, but it's funny to watch those, but I would just get jealous of these kids that would like just sit there and be like, bam, done. And I'm just like, dude, if I just wish it was that easy for me, because I never, again, I never had anyone to teach me how to skateboard. I never had someone where they're older than me and more experienced, and how they can just teach me the basics. I never had that. I was learning from photos and magazines for the most part, and eventually when I learned that there was actual professional skateboarding video parts on VHS back then, I learned how to not learn, but I should say I watched those and got more inspiration from them, and then went out to try to do some of the stuff myself, although it's a very bad idea to also to like watch those videos and then be like, oh, I'll go do all that now. It's just I mean, some kids can, but for me it just didn't work out that way. So again, those were probably, as far as like flip tricks go and the essential basics of skateboarding, I feel like those were always like my hardest ones to learn, because again, it was just more of a process of trying to learn how to force my feet to catch things, or again, do opposite process of how to slide feet or jump up or keep it all there and keep it all together and keep it underneath your body as well. And it was just one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn. But the point of this episode, when I say like the mental anguish, is that I feel like the exhilaration and like the exhilaration is really behind, I feel like, behind the process of the ability to have no knowledge of how to do a trick, and then just start working at it and working at it. And then weirdly, it's the same as like learning a new language in class, or well, I mean, back then at least, not online, but like just learning a new language or learning how to do math better, or anything in life really for that matter. But the ability to learn to kind of like, hack away at this new thing that you've either seen done before flawlessly for the most part in videos or in magazines, and then know that it's a possibility. And then you kind of, because once you have that like inspirational seed in your brain, the best thing and the worst thing sometimes about skateboarding to me is the fact that you see that being done, and then it inspires you to want to get it down and learn it, and just to have the knowledge that you can do it. Maybe not that great, but just know that you can do it. And then just that beginning process of having it be starting off as being nothing to you of ability, to then, but also knowing that the crazy thing about, and this is one of the craziest things about skateboarding in general to me, is that how almost everything for skateboarding starts off with the essentials. So for the most part, if it's like a flatland trick, like ollie, kickflip, heel flip, and maybe some other stuff like a pop shove it, but like that's always been one of my favorite things about skateboarding, is that everything for the most part, from the craziest tricks ever, are all a extension for the most part of what those basic essentials are. So that's why I feel like when I was growing up and I would always like see people just learning the basics and having trouble with them, like I was essentially, that I'd always tell them and try to remind myself that if you can just keep getting better at those and keep getting them down better and then be more fluent at them and more ability to do them better and cleaner, that really that's going to help you hopefully help you learn all the really crazy stuff if you go that far with it, or try and get better at stuff and just get better and better and better. But I love and I hate, honestly, like it's a love-hate thing, obviously, but I feel like I love and I hate all of the mental anguish behind learning those essentials, because when you, at least for me, again, this is all my opinion and my perspective, but I feel like when you're going through that learning process and you don't have, maybe for the most part, because I didn't have this, but when you don't have anyone as far as like a mentor or a better skater than you are around you, and all you see is perfection or seeming, or it looks like it's perfection, or it looks like it's super easy, then you have this like weird expectation that it's not a problem to do for some people, and that almost makes it harder to learn in some ways, which it shouldn't, but it does sometimes. But I remember again, what I love about it is that it teaches you the ability to push yourself harder than probably anything else in life, and I feel like that equates itself out to everything else in life as well. And that is, to me, that's one of the best things about skateboarding, is how you, again, have seemingly no knowledge or ability in the beginning. You just see something and you think it's cool and it's rad, and you want to learn how to do it, and then you start to see it more and more and more, and then you start to just kind of, again, pick apart or pick at the basicness of it until you get that down, and then it's all just and it's all just then from then a very basic building block of just tools to get to hone to become better and better and better at them. And then, I mean, again, you are going to fall, you are going to maybe get hurt, but it's just, again, it's one of the best things about skateboarding to me is how that everything starts off from that perspective, and that you just keep on, harnessing it until you learn it and get it better and better and better. And then that's what pushes you to become as good as you can be. And I think that the process, the mental agility of that is better and cooler than any other sport, like a team sport, I mean. And this is nothing against sports at all. I just feel like the individuality behind skateboarding is something that no other sport in that essence can really compare to, because you are almost you're almost your own worst enemy in those situations. And it's all about how much effort you want to give or not give in some cases to learn those things, even though they're basic things for skateboarding. It's just the ability to learn them is so much fun sometimes for the most part, but it's also a very exhausting process where you just can't get it one day, or things that you learned solidly, you thought a day ago, all of a sudden you just like forget how to do it. Your foot isn't working that day for flicking the board, whatever, like all that stuff, like the whole process of that works one day, then it doesn't work another day. And that's the other really honest frustration about skateboarding, is that it can be your best friend one day and then your worst enemy the other day, and that's part of the process too. So it's a matter of trying to make it as consistent as possible. So again, that's kind of really just how I feel about the relentless mental anguish that is skateboarding, as far as like the basic essentials of, for me at least, of how I learned how to skate and just get those essentials down. So again, hopefully, in the comments below, I would love if you would let me know in the comments about what those basic tricks were for you, and how you got around them to learning them better if you did, and just where you kind of, if they were when you started out like they were for me, all that stuff. So please let me know in the comments below all that information as well. I'd love to read all that as well. And that'll be kind of pretty much it for this episode, just to kind of wrap it up. But I'm hoping you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy this episode, then give it a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe. And if you want to just listen to it again, go over to Spotify and stream it, as well as Apple Podcasts as well. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys all in the next episode.